This story happened when I was serving in the Air Force and was stationed in California. I won't name the base, but I'm sure many people would recognize it once I share some details of this story. The story took place a few years after I was assigned there in 2006. After arriving, many new recruits, including me, were greeted with all kinds of creepy stories. There were tales about a man in a black hat who walked down a long, dark, narrow dirt road on the edge of the storage area. Another story was about a madman hit by a patrol car who ran into the woods nearby. But my story is related to a separate legend told to me by a pilot named James Harper, who had served there for several years. If I recall correctly, it was my second night shift. James told me about a little girl named Emily who used to visit her father while the storage zone was being built, long before we arrived. The story goes that little Emily was playing on some structures while her father worked, but she slipped off the edge of a building and died. Much of the story didn't make sense to me then, but regardless, it scared me to death. James drove me to the exact place where this story supposedly happened. He turned off the engine and music, and we just sat there silently. He tried to scare me a few times, but nothing happened. Fast forward about 3 years. I was assigned to work in this specific area of the base that night. I had visited the place many times before, but at that moment, the storage facility was completely locked down except for a few minor sections that required physical inspection. The shift started quite badly. My partner Mike and I were given a livestock truck for this patrol because our usual vehicle was in the shop for maintenance. Yes, a livestock truck. We had to do 3 random warehouse inspections that night, already completing 2 with no problems. Around 4 a.m., we decided to do the last check, knowing the main repair crews had left for the night. The only way into the area was through 2 very large gates that took forever to open. We closed the gates behind us and continued. Mike was driving, and I was the observer using a flashlight to check locks on each structure. An important detail I missed that might be necessary is that the story of little Emily happened on a road inside the storage area we called Echo Street. At that point, everything was fine, and we finished our rounds. Mike made the final turn onto Echo Street. We had been chatting most of the night when suddenly I got an uneasy feeling something had changed, but I couldn't tell what exactly. We were halfway down when everything became almost eerily silent. Even the rumble of the livestock truck and faint radio noise seemed to grow quieter as we approached the building from my earlier story. I have to emphasize that even telling or typing this part now sends chills down my spine and tears to my eyes from fear. As we neared the structure, I turned my head toward the outside window opposite the building, and from my left ear came a sound that almost made me soil myself. It was a human moan or groan of sorrow. Something like the moan of the girl from The Grudge. Yes, I'm serious. A faint, eerie moan started echoing inside the truck cabin between us. From the dark emptiness of the middle seat, I felt my blood run cold through my veins, and I quickly turned to Mike and shouted, "Dude, stop it!" Mike looked at me with a confused expression. He started lifting his foot off the accelerator and asked if I was driving too fast. I paused silently for a moment, listening. I heard the noise again. My partner interrupted and asked what was wrong. I turned off the music, initially saying nothing, then whispered, "Do you hear that?" He stopped the truck, listening carefully. There was almost dead silence for a moment. Then we both heard it again. This time, the long, eerie wail of a woman echoed in my ears. The sound was incredibly horrible, like someone trying to breathe in while being strangled. The horror was intensified by the fact that I wasn't the only one hearing it. I tried to ask again, but Mike interrupted quickly with strong fear in his voice. "What is it? We've been so stupid waiting to hear this again. The rumble of the gates behind the truck was easy to recognize. Metal striking metal, and the diesel engine's typical roar. But between these sounds, we heard it again, one last time. The moan was louder, and this time it sounded both inside and outside the truck, as if something surrounded us. Mike halted the truck and sped out of Echo Street faster than I had ever driven on any road on base, nearly flipping the truck on a turn. But we didn't care. We silently agreed we wanted to get out quickly. We reached the 2 gates again, and I jumped out as fast as I could. Mike watched my back as I opened both gates quickly. He jumped back in, sped away, and waited until I closed both gates. Once done, we quickly returned to the main base to meet our flight chief and reported what happened. When we finally met him, we expected him to think we were drunk or hallucinating since it was late and we were tired. But I clearly remember him saying, "I believe you both completely." Actually, this had happened to him twice in the same place and another building behind us, when he pointed to the brig. I know it sounds cliché with the grudge-like moan we heard, but this honestly happened and still brings tears of terror to my eyes whenever I tell it. I returned to that warehouse only once after this, but never took that road again, especially not after dark. I've told this story only to my wife and a few close friends. This happened while I was a radio operator in the Army during the Vietnam War. I was a young recruit, freshly drafted, knowing little about the war. I remember the road to base and how it smelled bad, like a sewer. The first night passed quietly but tensely. I was responsible for communications between my unit and others. During a jungle firefight, we encountered the enemy who started shooting at us. We returned fire. I saw 3 dead Viet Cong soldiers lying in pools of their own blood. I couldn't believe I was looking at people who were alive minutes ago. Later, I was assigned to another unit. An older man, R.K. Douglas, met me and ordered me to join his team as a liaison. We landed in dense forest near some Viet Cong huts. The guys there acted strange, emotionless, as if infected by something. Once, I peered into a tent and saw 6 murky containers with gorilla heads, tubes, and wires. The heads seemed alive, mouths and eyes twitching slightly. Douglas angrily warned me not to enter again. Next day, I woke with broken ribs and a fractured collarbone. Remembering nothing immediately after, I never saw Douglas or those soldiers again, and often wonder what they were doing. Late at night, our armored personnel carrier drove off a gravel road, pushing through dense bushes. The Bravo unit had gone silent weeks ago. We arrived at the abandoned base. Buildings were empty shells with broken windows and doors. There were signs of a fight, broken glass, blood-soaked rags, and scattered ammunition on the ground. The command center was abandoned, with flickering consoles and crackling radio speakers. A repeating sequence of numbers broadcast, 58247. Corporal Lee whispered, "What does it mean?" The commander, G. Haskins, had warned us. We pressed on, searching for clues. In a lab, we found the bodies of Bravo unit members scattered, faces twisted in terror. No gunshot wounds or signs of struggle. In the corner lay Commander Haskins holding a notebook. The numbers 58247 were scribbled, followed by chilling words. They are coming for us. The realization hit us hard. The fog outside thickened as if alive. We had to run. We stumbled through the fog, guided by the faint light of our vehicle. The numbers echoed in my mind, haunting us. Then, a shadow emerged from the mist. A strange man in a cloak approached, whispering, "We must leave now." Davis, snapping me back to reality, urged urgency. Our training prepared us for many foes, but never this. We climbed into the vehicle, Lee's hands shook as she called for immediate evacuation on the radio. The numbers crackled over the radio again. I couldn't shake the feeling those numbers held the key to what we found. As the base disappeared into the mist, so did the shadow. But the horror stayed with us as we raced into an uncertain future. Davis broke the silence, saying we couldn't let this end here. We had to find out what the numbers meant and what happened to Bravo. We climbed into the vehicle. Lee's hands shook as she called for immediate evacuation on the radio. The numbers crackled over the radio again. I couldn't shake the feeling those numbers held the key to what we found. As the base disappeared into the mist, so did the shadow. But the horror stayed with us as we raced into an uncertain future. Davis broke the silence, saying we couldn't let this end here. We had to find out what the numbers meant and what happened to Bravo. I wanted nothing more than answers, haunted by the lifeless, twisted bodies we left behind. The first light of dawn pierced the darkness. A grim determination filled me. We survived the night, but the real fight seemed just beginning, armed only with a string of numbers. The eerie memories, the mystery of the numbers, and the fate of Bravo still remain unsolved, haunting me. And I'm certain everyone in my unit feels the same. The horrors of that base were just a chapter in a much larger and scarier story than anyone could imagine.